quick and dirty between the whole ribbon burner and a Venturi burner. So for those of you that aren't familiar, you've probably seen these before. These are an example of a Venturi burner. These are what most people that build home forges have, and this is what a lot of professional blacksmiths use, and obviously that's because they work, and they're very simple in design. They don't require anything except the fuel that you put in them. So this example is a very good Venturi burner. This is made by Hybrid Burners in the US. This is their 1-inch model. They are fairly expensive. I believe I paid over $200 for this burner. But you can see it has an adjustable choke. There's a MIG tip in there that the propane one runs through that has the Venturi effect, so it sucks air in through these holes, blasts it out through the pipe. And it's a decent way of heating up a forge. I certainly used it for a long time and have worked with many Venturi forges. And again, they're simple, they're easy to build for someone that wants to build their own, doesn't have a lot of money. And the flame that they put out is obviously whatever size your burner is, your burner tube. So that's the basics of a Venturi burner, whereas a forced air burner, which is the other type of air fuel mixing system that you can have in your forge, instead of the Venturi effect, you have a forced air source bringing in your oxygen and your air to burn the fuel, instead of the velocity of the fuel bringing in its own air. So immediately I'll just discuss the drawbacks. So obviously it takes more material and more resources and more cost to make a forced air forge, because you need to build the system, you need a blower, and so on. It's also a little bit more complicated, and for a lot of people the big drawback is not only do you need the fuel to run your forge, whether that's propane or natural gas, you need power to run the blower. You can't just use a hand crank blower because it needs to be constant and it needs to be a perfectly steady airflow. Okay, so typically when you have a forced air gas forge system, you are putting it through what's called a ribbon burner. So if you're familiar with a barbecue, this is what a barbecue has. It has a ribbon burner pipe with a series of little holes in it. And that obviously differs from a Venturi burner because there's just one large flame instead of many tiny flames. Now, a ribbon burner is obviously a much more efficient way of burning propane because you have more surface area that's has flame, obviously, and also because you have a baffle system and you're forcing the propane in the air through all those little holes, you're getting almost complete combustion, so you're not wasting any of your fuel and you're burning it as much as possible. Something you'll notice between a Venturi forge and a forced air forge, especially if they're a little smaller, is that the Venturi burners will have much more flame coming out of the doors of the forge, whereas a forced air forge, the flames will be shorter and they'll mostly stay in the forge, and that's because you're forcing in that air. There's a tendency for that fuel to burn a little bit better. And the other nice thing about ribbon burners is they're typically quite a bit quieter. Obviously that depends on the blower you use. I, as you will see in a moment, have a very good blower on mine. It's very, very quiet. And so therefore my forge is quiet and I can speak in a normal speaking voice to someone that's beside my forge, which is nice when you're doing classes or something. Whereas with a Venturi burner like this, because you're creating the turbulence up here and that sucking sound that it makes, they're quite a bit louder in my experience anyway. So that's basically the quick and dirty between the ribbon burners and the Venturi style burners. So just to recap, the Venturi burners are cheaper, they require less resources, they're easier to make, however they seem to burn a little bit more fuel, whereas the forced air and the ribbon burner tends to have a more efficient burning and combusting cycle and generally gets a bit hotter And the cons of that, of course, is that it takes a little bit more resources to get that system set up, and a little bit more cost worthy, and you also need to have power right to that source. So next, of course, your favorite part, my personal opinion. I have went through a ton of different forge designs, a ton of different Venturi burners, and lately a few different styles of forced air gas forge, and I've worked with lots of other people's forge, and my general conclusion is what I'm going to tell you now, and that is, if you can do it, go with the forced air forge. Even though it's a little bit more time and money to set up, it is well worth it. The efficiency is increased a huge amount. Also, it gives you the ability to run natural gas. So with a Venturi burner, in my experience, it is impossible to have natural gas run through a Venturi burner and work. You need a forced air gas forge. Obviously, for most people, if you have access to natural gas, such as myself, here in Canada, it's going to be much more cost effective for you. And with this system, you can build a forge that is twice the volume for half the cost. So therefore, you're getting, with the same volume of forge, you're getting 1/4 of the cost. That's not volume of fuel, that's cost. Your volume of fuel will be about the same, maybe slightly more with natural gas. Okay, so now we're gonna go and we're gonna take a look at my forge that I'm using right now. It's a forced air gas forge, and see for yourself and let me know what you think. So to start off, we'll start at the wall here. I run my forge on natural gas that comes right out of the ground on the other side of that wall. I have 20 pounds of natural gas that comes in through this regulator and through this pressure gauge here, goes down the line, and here at the bottom I have a K & Sons blower that I got from Blacksmith's Depot, or K & Sons company. And so this is a squirrel cage blower, I believe it's called. This is the larger of the two. They're coal forge blower, and I'll just turn it on here, and I want you guys to see how quiet this is. So I'm just speaking in my normal voice. Obviously, once you open this up, it will get slightly louder, but that's about it. This blower gives off a ton of air, especially for its size and how quiet it is. I'll turn that off. Coming here to the line, I have a needle valve just for controlling on and off, basically, and I have a quick connect coupler that comes off and on like that. This is an 1/8 inch diameter pipe that comes in here, and it's welded, and it stops just under halfway inside this pipe. And so this is a 2-inch pipe end that has a flange on it that's bolted on, that comes around, and this is, I guess you'd call it the flange in here. And inside there is a plate under this weld that has a whole bunch of 5/16 holes drilled in it, and it acts like a ribbon burner. It's a good, cheap way to make a ribbon burner, just a round one. So this forge is probably about 350 cubic inches or so. It's really good for all the work that I do. I don't do a huge amount of production forging, but enough that it keeps up very well. I'll run this forge when I'm doing small hand work at about 1/2 to 1 PSI, and then when I need to crank it up a little bit, when I'm doing Damascus, say, and I want to get to a welding heat, I'll turn it up to between 1 to 2 PSI, and again, that's going through whatever size orifice an 1/8 inch pipe is. I believe this is schedule 80 1/8 inch pipe as well. So anyway, that's about it. We'll insert a quick video of this thing lit. Okay, so the best way I found to light a forced air forge is just with a torch here. So I'm going to turn on the blower, and I let that get going, and then I will put the flame inside and then turn on the natural gas. And there we go. So the forge is lit now. Okay, this is what the forge looks like when it's lit. If we go down here, you can see the flame that's leaving here. Okay, so here's the forge after it's been going for a couple of minutes. Again, this still has only about, probably less than 1 pound of natural gas going in it right now. And this is smoking hot. This is hot enough you can make hammers in this forge. I know that the video doesn't pick it up really well, but it is absolutely a glowing inferno in there. And as you can see, it's pretty quiet. It works really good. This is obviously an overkill burner, as I mentioned, but it gets really hot, and it is extremely more efficient, than other types of forges. Okay, thank you again for coming and watching the video. I really hope this has helped you. This has been the quick and dirty on ribbon burners and forced air gas forge systems. So I hope this has helped you a little bit. Let me know if you see anything that you wanted to see a little bit more in depth that I could help you guys with. Thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.